Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach, and today we have with us David DeCelle, who's the president of Model FA, who's on a mission to serve thousands of financial advisors worldwide. David, welcome to the program.
Appreciate you having me on, Mike. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I love your tagline there. You're not on a mission to sell stuff to financial advisors. You're serving. You're providing value. So I love that mental picture it brings. So I want to dive into what you do and the work you provide. But give us a little bit of idea of your entrepreneurial journey up to this point.
Yeah, for sure. So probably started all the way back in high school. A friend of mine and myself started a boat detailing and painting company. And we did that from like 16 to 21 years old. And that's right around the time where I first scratched my entrepreneurial itch. And it was at the point that I decided I never really wanted to work for someone else, but be in charge of my own destiny. Shortly thereafter, started as a financial advisor at 21 years old, did that for 7 years. And then once I left that practice, I decided to go into consulting. And fast forward to today, that's where we're at.
So I love, starting a business when you're young, and you hear those stories so many times, from the lemonade stands to the boat detailing. All that is awesome. When you became a financial advisor at age 21, boy, we could just unpack that so much, because the first thing that comes to my mind is, who in the world were you networking with as far as clients, and why do they trust a 21-year-old? And so when you're answering that question, I want to dive deeper into some of the lessons that you learned that now you teach the advisors you work with, because it really is developing relationships.
100%. I think that at that age, you have a lot of imposter syndrome, and you ask yourself that question, right? What's this 50-year-old going to take from working with me? But I think that you quickly realize that just by taking the exam and being in that industry day in and day out, more than most of the people that you're trying to serve. Just based on that, you couple that with the fact that there were more seasoned advisors in my office that I was able to take out for joint work. And I always say, and I say this now, that regardless of someone's age, if they enter into a conversation with an open mind and having already suppressed their ego, I feel like anyone can get value from anyone if they're good at asking great questions and listening to the answers and not having any preconceived notions as to, hey, what does this kid know? So It was definitely a challenge, I would say. But at the end of the day, if you can get through to the person that you're sitting across from a likability perspective, and you're able to succinctly answer the questions that they have, given the topic at hand, you are quickly able to, garner respect and credibility, with that person. But again, they need to come to the table, with an open mind and, not necessarily be too assumptive of what this person knows. Now, I will say, being able to grow and have a beard at that age certainly helps a little bit. So I didn't have totally.
You weren't peach fuzz, and
days, but
that helped just a teeny bit. But still, you're 21 and I'm 50, and what do you know? And here's what I think would layer into that. And when you were 21, here's what I will predict you did not know. But on your website, you have advisors must find a unique value proposition. And that sounds all great and cliche, and all that makes sense, right? And I want to dive into that, but that jumps out at me because normally we hear USP, unique selling proposition. And it's that mindset shift, like I mentioned at the beginning, where it's like, oh, let's provide value, let's serve. But if you're providing a unique value proposition, doesn't that come across so much differently than a unique selling proposition? Because it's like close, close, close. So maybe you didn't know that back then, or maybe that was intrinsically in your mindset. But let's talk a little bit about providing and finding and crafting a unique value proposition.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't something that I was born with knowing by any means. I mean, when I first started in the career, it was very much a numbers game to me, and a lot of selling type of vibes. And what I learned throughout that career as an advisor is, I alienated a lot of people, in my world, be it, just random prospects or family and friends, because anytime I reached out to them, I was always asking for something. I was asking for their time or their money or their network. And what ended up happening was I started to fall out of love with what I was doing, because I felt as if people didn't want to talk to me. And quite frankly, I don't blame them based on, my strategy at that point in time. So it was at that point when I, left that career and got into consulting, I was very much focused on providing value. So what do advisors need? What do advisors struggle with? What are advisors, looking to learn? And what I did was I created a lot of content on all the social platforms. So LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, et cetera, YouTube. And I would put out all this content for free. And, if someone had a question, I'd be able to send them that piece of content. That way we were able to have a constructive conversation together. And what I found is when you put all that good information out there for free, it accomplishes a couple different things. One, it increases your credibility, because people don't necessarily need to meet with you to learn from you. They can, watch, listen, or read your content. And then in addition to that, there's a point in time where there's a certain amount of time, that people end up spending with you in a leveraged manner, in consuming your content, that they get to like you from afar. Obviously, if they like the content and they get value from it. And then by the time they're ready to consider doing business with you, they're reaching out to you directly. And it totally changes the vibe of that initial conversation, because they feel like they know you from afar. They all already know that you're credible in what it is that you're talking about. And then from there, it's just a matter of, bringing them through, your process to determine if you're a fit to work together. So it was, a combination of imposter syndrome, sales tactics instead of value tactics, that caused me to, fall out of love with not what I was doing per se, but the way in which I was doing it. And then I took a chance to practice patience by providing value and essentially waiting for, people to start reaching out to me. And, now it's the majority of the business that, we get is come to us, or has come to us, because people spend a lot of time consuming content in the meantime, and they end up reaching out when they're ready.
I love that, and it made me think of something interesting. Have you ever read the book, The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes?
I haven't, but I love to read, so I'll check it out.
So there's a good one. Just go to Amazon and get that. The Ultimate Sales Machine, Chet Holmes. I forget when it was written, but probably 70s, 80s. And he was a business consultant. And the gist of it, the point I'm making is he was in charge of sales for like a magazine advertising department. And he was just, the bull in the china closet is what normally they would do. But he came in and took a different approach and transformed everything they did and just blew them up the sales-wise. But basically what he would do is he would say, we should not be selling and telling. We should be educating, and we should be taking the approach of being an advocate for the success of our target audience. And when he switched it around there and now provided things like, oh, hey, thanks for your time to meeting with me. Here's this research article, or hey, last week we spoke, here's this piece of, well, it transforms the approach you take, and you kind of come off with commission breath if you do it the wrong way. So I love the concept that you figured out, teaching or educating. Was there someone that taught you that, or was that just kind of like a natural move for you?
It certainly wasn't natural. I don't know if you've heard of the gentleman and influencer, if you will, Gary Vaynerchuk, but I've read one of his books called Crushing It, and then shortly after that, I read the rest of his books, and then that's when I decided to take a leap of faith and start my business, was because of that, and he goes deep into the importance of producing content for the reasons I already mentioned, and then on top of that, what it helps with is it helps increase your relevance in people's lives because they're seeing you pop up on all their social platforms on a daily basis. Yeah. And when you spread that across multiple platforms, you then become omnipresent with these people, meaning they're always going to see you. So, trust is built not just based on elapsed time, but based on the accumulation of experiences. And what you're doing in that instance is you're condensing those experiences on a daily basis, so it brings them through that trust cycle, that much faster.
Yeah, that's huge, and Gary and many people like him are talking about things that people either don't know, because when you heard that, you didn't know that, but then guess what? You elevated yourself far above your competitors because you took the time to do it. So what I would say to you is, when you are working with financial advisors now in your field, and you're advising them and coaching them on growing their practice, how do you tell them to marry that content creation omnipresence with not watering down their message and being all over the place, but staying really tightly dialed in to their, really unique value proposition that they need to be presenting to their clients? Because I feel like if they even do it, they're going to be just all over the place and shiny object syndrome and talking about 10,000 different things. So what do you do with an advisor to help them stay on point?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. It's just two things. Number one, define who it is that you're serving. So are you working with business owners, or are you working with retirees, or are you working with the medical professions? Who is your niche? And make sure that your content is geared towards those people directly. That way they feel as if you're speaking directly to them and not just putting out generalized content. That would be number one. And then number two is anything that is very timely, whether it's a tax law that's changed, or a planning strategy that's now become relevant, or a time of year that makes sense to do certain things. So just making sure that the content is geared directly towards a particular group of people, and making sure that you're capitalizing on anything that's timely in manner, so that people can take advantage of whatever that opportunity is that you're talking about at that point in time.
Yes. So here's another book, either recommendation or question. Have you read Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller?
Yes. Great book.
Yes. And what you just said there made me think of his teaching point in there, which is, when you confuse, you lose. And so if you can make sure that everything is dialed in really tightly, and maybe that means you need to sit down once a quarter and create your content calendar. Like, this month we're going to talk about this topic, which means this week we need to whatever. So you need to keep it really tightly dialed in, because to the point about what Donald Miller talks about is, when you confuse, you lose. And he also mentions another point in there: if people have to burn so many quote unquote mental calories to figure out what it is you're talking about, they just move on. So I think that's a really huge point that you bring up there.
Appreciate it.
Hey, so let's wrap up with one last question. Your website talks about creating a memorable client experience so that then that advisor can build a base of referrals and raving fans. You use the phrase proactively give referrals. And I know that I've got an interview with Bill Cates coming up in the next few weeks, and he's known for, building referrals, and you can do master classes on that. But I love the phrase proactively giving referrals, because I think sometimes people don't want to ask because I don't want to trouble people. So what is your take on proactively giving referrals?
Yeah, and it's actually ironic that you bring up Bill Cates. The episode is not released yet, but just had him record an episode on my podcast yesterday, actually. So
neat.
a little serendipitous. Yes, a little serendipitous. But so client experience, like people aren't going to talk to other people about you if their service needs are met. People talk about you because you made them feel great. So the example I always give is, if you were to go to McDonald's, which for the record, I don't go to McDonald's, but if you were, you order the big, you order a Big Mac and you ask them to not put onions on that Big Mac. And you go through the drive-through and you get your Big Mac and there's no onions on there. It's like, cool. Like, that's what I asked for. You're not going to necessarily talk to people about that. But when you go to a steakhouse and they pull your date's chair out, they scrape off the crumbs in between the courses, they fold your napkins. If you go to the restroom, the chef comes out to make sure your steak is cooked perfectly, and then they comp a dessert at the end. Like, that's something that you're going to talk about. So you got to figure out, are you currently offering that steakhouse experience or that McDonald's service to your clients? And one of the things that Bill and I talked about yesterday is that starts in the onboarding phase, where you want to anchor them in a particular mindset. So you want to wow them, during the first 90 days of working together, because then what's going to happen is they're going to start to view everything that you're doing for them through a positive lens. And even if you make a mistake at some point throughout the relationship, they're more likely to forgive that mistake because they know that that's, not how you operate your business. So that could be anything from, following up with them rather than email. It's a video summary of the plan that you went over with them. It could be a small gift. It could be a podcast or a book recommendation, kind of like how you've done with me today. It could be, if they're into cooking, perhaps you share your favorite recipe with them. It's a random phone call just to check in, see how they're doing. And, last time you spoke, little Johnny was starting his football season. How's that going? Just like taking a vested interest in these people, and going back to what I said before about trust is based on the accumulation of experiences, not just based on elapsed time. I would argue that if you have 50 touch points with a client over a 5-year period, that's 10 per year. I'm willing to bet that if you had those same 50 touch points with a client over the course of 12 or 18 months, regardless of the time, 12 or 18 months or that 5-year period, they're going to feel the same about you after that 50th touch point, regardless of that time. So I'm a big believer in condensing those touch points to get them from a new client to a good working relationship to a loyal client, and then ultimately to that raving fan status as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I just couldn't agree anymore. And when you gave that example of that experience and taking notice of people, I think that sometimes listeners could go, oh, yeah, I've heard that before. But I will tell you something relevant, like you mentioned about your interview that's not even gone live. So how in the world could I have known? I didn't know. It's just, interesting timing. But when you said that, it made me think of something that happened this week. You know how many times we all get hit up on social media, like a Facebook message, oh, hey, we need to. I got hit up this week by some vendor, and they did something very interesting that was a cause for pause, which is, he goes, oh, hey, Mike, I see you're in Denver and you're a Broncos fan. Hey, can you believe that Teddy Bridgewater, and he used to play for Minnesota where I'm at, and hey, I hope you enjoy him. And I'm like, interesting. Now, how much time did that take? He just looked at my Facebook profile, so I'm sure that somewhere I have on there that I like the Denver Broncos, made just an interesting comment, and then he made his little, recommendation or whatever. We've got to call Monday. So not that I'm going to lay down and go, I will give you anything you want, but it just helps to break the ice. And how much effort does that take? It doesn't take much at all. And hearkening back to old books, Harvey Mackay, the speaker and the author, talks about the Mackay 66, which is, in a nutshell, you need to learn these 66 things about your target audience, questions and where they went to school and all of that, so that you have relevant things to really deepen a relationship. And it doesn't mean you email the 66 questions and say, please fill this out, thank you, or let me rattle them off and say, please answer these. because now you just feel used. You must do what you said, which is just learn about people and condense it down, sure. But boy, you don't want people to feel like they're another number. And that is what you said at the very end there. That's what turns people from just, oh, happy clients, that's what we want. No, we want raving fans.
100%.
So guess what, David? I really, really think that we could probably talk for about, 9 more hours without taking a breath here and really bring up a lot of great zingers. But let's go ahead and wrap up with, if someone's listening to this going, you know what? Oh, David takes a unique approach to building my financial planning practice. Maybe I need to learn a little bit more about what they do. What's the best way they can reach out, connect with you, learn a little bit more about Model FA?
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate it. So the first place would be our website, which is modelfa.com. Specifically on that site, on the top right-hand corner, it says read, listen, and watch. It's our blog, our podcast, and our video series. So there's a lot of great information there. We don't hold back on, the nugget, to where you have to pay us for it. We put everything out there. So feel free to check that out. Also, I'm probably most engaged on Instagram, which is just at David_DeCelle, which is DeCelle. So feel free to follow me on there, and we can interact, get to know each other from afar. And then lastly, I'm always open to chat and have a 15-minute conversation to see how I may be of service or just provide you with some nuggets on that call. And if you'd like to set that up, you can either reach out to me on Instagram, as I mentioned, or you can text me directly at 978-228-2338, and happy to have a conversation.
Wonderful, David. Thank you for your time today. It was really a great pleasure talking with you about some of these really great strategies. So thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Take care.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.